Hello everyone and welcome to a special episode of Blue Tengu's Game Development Show. This one's going to be just on YouTube because it's probably going to take quite a bit of editing, and it's not something that's really suited for doing live on Twitch because it involves a lot of horrible sounds coming out of the computer. The reason is because it's a music-focused special. Why I'm doing this. I'm not a musician, let me warn you first off, so if you are a musician you're probably going to get almost nothing out of this. What I'm going to try to do is show how I go about making game music based on tips I've got from Jim Orion and other people in the past. Definitely not a musician, definitely not going to create any grand symphonies that'll last the test of time here, but if you are making a game on your own and you want to kind of get into music, hopefully my ignorance is actually going to help you out a little bit, because I'm not going to go too deep into anything because I can't. So let's get you started here. Should probably jump to the desktop. So here's the reason I have to do this. As much as I've been dreading this episode, I've been putting it off for a long time. I need a lot of music for the game. I'm not going to hire anyone to do it. All the music on the show so far I've been able to manage, more or less by following a lot of tips given to me by Jim Orion. You should check out his show, by the way, if you're interested, especially in Kerbal Space Program or Minecraft. But he is a musician, so and he's involved in the music community, and he actually does have very useful tips, especially with one piece of software which is free, which I'll show you. Let's jump to that right away. Today, actually, for the tasks, I'm not going to do all of these things. I've been doing them a little bit at a time. I'm just going to try to kind of go into the method that I've been doing these things in, mainly because I just want you to see what goes into making these things, because the whole thing about the Blue Tengu concept is to show you everything that goes into making a game, including these embarrassing parts like this. The software I'm going to be using is something called Linux Multimedia Studio, LMMS for short. You can come over to lmms.io and grab it. It is free. When you do grab it, you're going to end up with something like this. Let me launch it. Easy enough. And I should probably shrink it so that it fits into the monitor space there. Sorry, I do have an old monitor, so it's kind of a pain getting everything to fit right for you guys. But this is the basic interface. I'm going to assume that you guys are starting from zero, so if you're not starting from zero, you might want to skip ahead over a few of these things. But the way LMMS works is you line all these things up in tracks and you play them. Easy enough. Let's get rid of some of this stuff that I'm not really going to explain right off the bat. When you start a new project, it defaults you to these things. It kind of just gives you an example of each one just in case you want to get started. I usually delete most of them. You can use some of them. I'll explain what they are later, but first, LMMS comes with a lot of plugins that you can use. If you want your own sounds, for example, you're going to have to use plugins. And LMMS is able to handle all these different ones here. The most popular is probably going to be VST, the vestige thing here. So like if you pull the vestige plugin, drag and drop it over here, there you go, you've got it. There's nothing in there though. If you start grabbing VST plugins from the internet, just look for VST plugin and some instrument that you want to look into. Like for example, let's do an acoustic guitar. Since it is a Western game, it makes sense to have an acoustic guitar in here. So for example, there we go. That's what happens when you pull it in, and I should probably turn that volume up, shouldn't I? Well, it should be okay, right? Hopefully you guys can hear this just fine. Hopefully. In fact, I should take a break and actually check this, just to make sure the sound level's alright, because this is a sound episode, so I don't want to screw that up. So I will be right back. Okay, I think I've got the right balance of the noise coming out of my mouth and the noise coming out of the computer. I hope this works out. Had to lower the volume on the microphone and up the volume on the PC. I think this should make them about right, because I don't want to blow out your speakers when you're trying to hear one thing and then suddenly I start talking and blow out your speakers. That sounds about right to me anyway. So there you go. You've got an acoustic guitar in there, you can play it. That's nice, but it doesn't give you very many options. So what you can do is come over here, and look, you've got a piano. You can start laying down your notes as you please. I'll explain how to avoid making chaos, because if you do something like this, if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to sound like nonsense. Alright, that's actually not bad. I have to work a little harder at making nonsense, I guess. There you go. It sounds horrible, and there's reasons for that that go into music theory. I'm not that versed on music theory, but what I do know is that you know, that when they talk about like major and minor and C major and minor and stuff like that, when you're listening to classical music and things like that, they don't usually mention it for pop music, but it is there. It's always behind the scenes. What it is it's a list of kind of combinations that work. So for example, a trick in LMMS you can use is if you wanted to use the major scale, it's usually the most popular. Depending on what you want to do. So for example, if you want to do C major, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, it's the simplest, it's the most well known. It's probably where a lot of like music classes start, for example. So if you go do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay. There you go. That's what C major is. It just do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's the major scale. There's also something called a minor scale. Also, there's other major scales. You don't have to. So, for example, you could have D major, which is this. Get back to D. Let's not loop it. So you kind of hear that there's a little bit of a different atmosphere going on there. I'll tell you right now that for Project Spaghetti, I actually use D major quite a bit, and there's a reason for that that I'll go into. But long story short, D major is usually kind of symbolic of kind of a heroic thing or a military thing, like a lot of like military marches and things like that might use D major. C major is more straightforward. D major's got, just because of the way the notes come out, because of these patterns and things, they kind of play into the psychology of it all. And there's also minor keys here. So let's see if I can find one. This is where I'm going to fall apart because I'm not that great at this kind of stuff. Let's just assume this is actually going to mean something. So I picked, like going on the keys, it starts from C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. It just kind of goes like that across the keyboard. So for this, I picked B flat, and I picked a harmonic minor. So this is what this is going to sound like, starting at B flat. By the way, flat is when you go down one, like a half step, which are these like the distance here. No idea what this is going to sound like, but we'll see. Kind of sounds a little mysterious. No idea what I was going to expect from that, but it kind of sounds, you know, like the intro to like maybe a cheesy kind of detective drama or something on TV. You could see them using something like this, you know, someone going around on tiptoes or whatever. So you can see that there's a, you know, the scale that you pick, and whether you go with major, which is usually more upbeat, or minor, which is usually more downbeat, that combination is going to give you a good base to start with. So, for example, if I do want to do, going back to major, if I do want to do kind of a big cowboy thing, you know, heroic military kind of beat to it, I can stick to the D major scale here. Whoops, make sure I actually get on D major. Yeah, okay, I'm good. And all I have to do is, if I've marked this scale, I just have to stick to these. You know, wherever there's a blue line, that's a safe, kind of a safe key to use, which means almost no matter what combination you use of them, it's not going to give you that sound like if you do some like what I was doing before with the chaos. It already kind of sounds like a little bit of a cowboy thing. We've got an acoustic guitar playing kind of an upbeat, kind of heroic song, so you know, kind of any combination works out. So it's not that hard to get your bass going. Should also mention there are plenty of other scales to work with as well. Let's see, there's a whole bunch of them in here, obviously, but LMMS gives you plenty of options. But Ionic is, if you look up modes on the internet, you're going to see Ionic, you're going to see Dorian, Lydian, Phrygian, and maybe a couple of others. But Ionic is usually just the major one. It's the one we all know. But there are other ones. There's like Dorian, for example. And let's see if I can mark this correctly. Hopefully it does mark things properly. Yes. Sounds just a little bit different than when you're using like C major. And that plays into like emotions and things like that as well. So before I go on with this, to help you kind of pick your bass, I guess, to say it, would be if you want to pick your key, for example, one awesome site is biteyourownelbow.com/key care, char.htm. Here they just have like a lot of reference when it comes to like, you know, what different people think these keys mean. It's not, you know, this is exactly what this key means. It just means there's a tendency to be like this. So for example, this is, you know, Christian Schubert's idea, but, you know, like C major, the one that I was playing originally, is just pure, it's innocent, it's, you know, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's what we learned back in, you know, grade school and everything else. It's straightforward. But if you want to do like C minor, maybe it has a little bit more of a, you know, a little bit more of a downbeat on that simplicity and innocence kind of thing. So it gets a little more like longing and loneliness and stuff. D major, the thing I was just playing now, you know, triumph, war cries, good for video games, marches, etc. Pumps you up. Whereas like if you go D minor, you get a little bit more of like a little bit more of just a little bit of a whimper on that. And there's all sorts of other combinations here, like D sharp. If you go up one from D, like to the next black key, and start from there and mark your scale with a minor, then you can kind of get this, you know, feelings of anxiety. In fact, let's show that and see what it looks like, because I'm kind of curious myself. I've never tried that one. So like D is here, so D sharp would be one key up, like a half key up. So D, D sharp. Let's see if I can mark this. D minor. I want to go with minor. D minor. Okay, let's see what this sounds like. And get back to where I started. Yeah, that kind of, like, it's these distances that make the difference. So it's like, ding, ding, ding. It kind of has that little bit of a suspense to it. So there's definitely an anxiety there, like especially at the end. You know, this little jump here kind of creates that anxiety for me anyway. Kind of a little like a question mark at the end, at least the way I hear it. So that's like D minor, for example. There's plenty of other options in here. The deep depression, the F minor one. Oh Lord, let's go through that one. let's go emo. So let me make sure I get it right. F minor, yes. All right, so C, D, E, F, and then minor. Yes, that's set. All right, so C, D, E, F minor, start there. And just kind of give you the whole range of what this sounds like. Yep, okay, that should end it. Yeah, it does sound kind of downbeat. Obviously, it's going to be the combination of what you do with it that's going to make it sound like depressive or whatever. And then like, you know, B minor and stuff like that is, you know, calm and everything else. And this is just one person's opinion, and this site lists a whole bunch of other people's opinions. So for example, what I was just playing, F minor, instead of being depressive, this guy says obscure and plaintive. So for example, it's kind of interesting to go through here. If you've got a mood that you're trying to strike, this is a good place to start. If you want cheerful love, if you want the key of the grave, then, you know, for your game over music or whatever, then you can kind of come over here and pick your key to start with. There's also things called modes, which you can use, which was that whole Dorian stuff that I was going through. And this kind of goes through it. I'm sure the Wikipedia article mentions that Ionian is just major and minor keys, but this is, again, an opinion, because obviously you can do anything with music, and a lot of people can. But if you're just starting out, it's pretty good reference to follow these kind of moods. So if you want kind of a more serious tone, you can go with Dorian, for example. Let's see. Actually, this Reddit article seems to have a really good list. Not sure how I'm going to post all these links for you guys, but we'll figure it out. But like Dorian, again, it says serious, dreamy, adventurous, nocturnal. Okay, but yeah, Dorian has a little bit more of like a kind of a mysterious quality to it. Phrygian is going to take that even further. Phrygian's going to be, you know, like your horror movie kind of soundtrack, uses maybe a lot of Phrygian stuff. Lydian, I think The Simpsons, for example, uses Lydian, if I'm right. But you know, it's more bright and cheerful, and it's just kind of, it's goofy, for example. There's some other things, like I think these are more for like blues and things like that. And there's plenty of other ones that I've never really worked with. The harmonic minor that I was just doing now, creepy, tragic, things like that. These, again, are just all opinions. So it just kind of depends on what you're going for. If you're going for like a horror theme, then maybe you want to pick like, you know, maybe start with B and go Phrygian with it or something like that. And you can kind of experiment and just, you know, do like what I was doing here. If you want to kind of get the sound of what it's going to be like. That's awesome to have that just there kind of in the way. Let's get it out. So like, for example, if I did for some reason want to go with, where is it? All right, for Goldian, I hope that's the same thing. Let's see, B minor. Let's just see what this sounds like. There we go. Yeah, it's kind of downbeat. It's kind of down low. So you can kind of use that as your bass. That's for just kind of giving you a guide, you know, the lines to draw in, basically. And there's plenty of music theory out there, plenty of videos, plenty of people that actually know what they're talking about that can go into much more detail than I can. That's not what this is about. This is just for people like me who want to get started. So that's the bass. Coming back out here, you can kind of add other plugins as you want to. LMMS does come with some instruments, so like, for example, samples in here, things like that. If you want a techno sync, you know, imagine the old keyboard where it's just like you start off with the bass beat and then you start adding to it. Yeah, you could probably do all that stuff here too. I tend to use mostly plugins now. I started out not doing that, but there's a lot of good stuff in here as well. And there's a lot of good presets as well that come with LMMS for some of these things, like triple oscillator. It's one of the plugins, but there's a lot of things you can do with it. Like Jupiter's kind of cool. So you have plenty of sound choices. Plenty of sound choices. But because I don't want to have just billions and billions of choices and make just kind of this eclectic soundtrack, like if you've been watching the show, you know that for Project Spaghetti, I've been using the Commodore 64 color palette. To do this, in the same way, I kind of want to keep my music choices limited because I'm not a great artist nor am I a great musician. So if I keep my choices limited, I can at least keep things consistent. Hopefully not consistently bad. But so for example, I do want just a few Western instruments and I want to work from them. So like, for example, what I've been working with so far, to kind of load it all up, let's see, I've got my acoustic guitar in there. Let's see, what else have I been working with? Mostly VST plugins, I think. I've definitely been using a harmonica because that's obviously a very Western thing. Get rid of that, get it out of the way. Don't need a bunch of junk on the screen. I've been using 2 acoustic guitars actually using the same plugin. All of the plugins that I found so far are free, so you can find them as well. DSK Acoustic Guitar Z is what I've been using. The one I was just using before is Acoustic Guitar Low, but there's also just regular acoustic guitar for a little bit higher beats. Actually, I should rename these as well. Acoustic guitar. I should spell it with a K like they do in the plugin. That's my harmonica. So you just double click and you can rename as you want. Alright, this is my acoustic guitar low. Good. Keep naming things. I also use another plugin for sound fonts. Sound fonts are a little bit different from VST plugins. What it is basically someone literally just grabs recordings of instruments at different pitches here, for example. So, for example, what I've been doing with this is, hopefully I can find it, plugins, sound fonts. So, like the banjo, someone probably took a banjo and actually recorded it. So, with sound fonts, it's a little different than VST plugins. With sound fonts, some are kind of hit and miss. Some sound fonts, if you're within a certain range, it's okay, but then once you cross into another range, it suddenly like changes on you. So sound fonts are a little tricky to use. You can just play with it. I think, like for example, the banjo. There are just certain parts where it just suddenly like dips way down, and it's like, It's correct key and everything else, but it's just the other organic sounds that kind of play into it just make it feel a little bit different. But there's the banjo. And what else am I using? Like for the beat and bass line, obviously since it's a Western, I don't want to use just a kicker, which is this. It'd be a weird Western game to have the sound going in the background, so I don't use that, obviously. What I do use, in this case, hopefully things don't crash on me. I should probably save this. Western test. Let's do that. There's a couple of great plugins. One is the Tyrell N6 plugin, which is awesome. Gives you lots of options. Come in here. Whoever did this is a genius. And I use like Noise Factory for claps. There we go. To show you what that sounds like. Just, it's a clap that kind of has a little more of an echo to it. So that's the verbed claps. And one more thing I do use, because it's a Western themed game, the one that kind of fits is another Noise Factory one called Maracas. Yes, of course. Sounds right. And I've been adding these to the beat baseline. Sorry that's in Japanese for you guys. I just have a Japanese operating system, so it decides to do that by default, but this says beat baseline editor. The difference between putting something here as opposed to like drawing notes out here is that in here you can kind of create just an instant pattern to kind of keep your rhythm. In fact, let's do one really quick. And it just keeps looping back and forth. You can have as much variation as you want by adding to it. Oops. So if you want a little bit of a slowdown. It's kind of got a military march to it. So you can do that, and then once you do that, all you have to do is click here and it just creates the pattern for you over and over again. So as it runs through this, it's just going to keep playing those things over and over and over again. nice finale there. So let's see, I've got an acoustic guitar harmonica. There's one more sound font that I do use, and that is the front piano. If it sounds like I know what I'm talking about music, it's only trial and error that's gotten me this far. You will get here very quick. Let's see if I can find my front piano. Was it a VST plugin actually? Maybe it was. Maybe it was. Let me check. I do have a front piano somewhere. Oh, okay, it was a VST plugin. Alright, so it's not a sound font. It's probably why it's been easy to use. So what a front piano is, it's the old-timey piano. It's kind of like the classic version, so it'll give you kind of that old-timey Western piano sound. So in my case, these are instruments that work. Obviously, if you're not making a Wild West game, these are not the instruments you'd want. Well, maybe if you're making a Wild Western sci-fi shooter or something, it might work. Piano. Let's just rename it that. So that gets me started on instruments. So that's the base. What you can do is, obviously, you can play, you can stop. You can also add more beats and bass lines and things like that. The sample track is if you have like your voice or something. Obviously, I wouldn't do it for this game, but if you wanted to add like your voice going bass or something like that every once in a while, that's where you do it, adding a sample track. Automation tracks can do a lot of stuff for you automatically, like if you want to kind of make the volumes go up or down. What it's especially useful for is if you have a lot of tracks. I probably won't, but if you do have a lot of tracks, it's useful to help you with mixing and things like that. Like, for example, if you want to fade a certain instrument down a bit when a new instrument comes in, you could probably use automation with that. You could also use something called a mixer. So I think this will do it. You can also use this effect mixer. Sorry about the Japanese again. And you can start adding like effects and different things in here and just raise volumes, lower volumes as you go. That's mixing. That's way beyond what I can probably talk about. I would certainly not be qualified to talk about it either. Not that I'm that qualified to talk about this, but here we go. Let's get rid of these. So I've got all my instruments. Now the question becomes, how do you get started? Great, I've got instruments. Now what? If you're starting to make a new song, my recommendation is to start with kind of the basic beat. Usually when you get a song in your head, you're thinking of the fancy bits. Like if you've got this tune in your head that you think, oh, this will work, and you got this or something like that, and you're trying to put that down. It's kind of hard to work that way. If you're professional, I'm sure it's not hard to work that way, but if you're not, what happens is you'll start to do something like this. Let's get this in something that actually makes sense to me. Let's go with D major again. All right, there we go. So you've got all these fancy notes in your head or something, and you're kind of going along. That's cool. Okay, yeah, that sounds about like what's in my head. So let's keep adding to that. What happens is you start to get kind of lost. It's easy to get lost anyway. Because you get to this point where it's like, I've got this cool bit here, but how do I actually keep this thing going? I don't get it. If that doesn't happen to you, don't worry about it. Keep going, because you're lucky. But usually the easy way to get this going is to start with something like, for example, the acoustic guitar low, which is kind of like a bass throbby sound. And you can start down low. Usually you do, just an extra hint by the way, usually you do want to kind of separate your instruments along these like keys, for example. You don't want all of your instruments kind of in the same range, because then it'll sound like they're competing with each other. So sometimes you want some low instruments, you want some high instruments, so they can kind of stand out on their own. You can do a lot of mixing and stuff to avoid that if you do want them all to be in the same range, but that's beyond this. So the easy way to do this is to put, like, for example, a bass beat way down here, and you want to keep this part simple. Maybe just one variation or something. And just repeat that. Obviously, this is not going to make the best song in the world. It's just repeating the same thing over and over again. But what it does do for you is it starts to get kind of the rhythm in your head, and you can kind of imagine how other things kind of go on top of it. It also helps you decide if this is the right beats per minute for the song. LMMS defaults to 140, which is actually kind of fast. For a lot of video game music, it's probably all right. But for example, if you want to go really slow, you can go 90. So like for example in Project Spaghetti's case, the Graveyard song is probably going to be 90 because it's going to be slower and creepier in general. But usually anywhere from 90 to 150 even is okay. You could even go up to 160. I mean, if you've seen songs that display the beats per minute after them, you kind of know what this means. Goes faster, slower, and that's going to affect the entire mood of your entire song. One, I guess, side bit of advice: if you're trying to get your song done quicker, the more beats per minute you have, the longer it's going to take you to compose a minute of that song, because it's going a lot faster. But in this case, let's do something simple: 120. Keep it straight forward. Just kind of soft background music. And this is repeating, this is boring, that's no fun. But what you can do is you can kind of start with that and then start adding things on top of it. You want to stick with your key. This is why using a key is actually very useful. If you want to keep it very simple, obviously music experts don't have to keep it simple because they know where keys that sound good together go. But if you just kind of want things to work, you can just start with the same key. The bass was down here at C or D. It was down here, but I'll start the piano here. And I can do something different with the piano. I don't have to do the same, as it says 16th note here, but don't have to do the same thing. In LMMS, you can stretch these out, or you can shrink them, so you can make them much quicker. Simple enough. If you keep using the same kind of start, like you see these lines here, unless you're using a different kind of rhythm for your song, which is a more complicated subject. But if you're using a standard kind of rhythm, these are kind of like a sentence. Like if you think of a sentence, these are kind of commas or periods or something. It's kind of like where things come around again. So if you do this over and over again, you can already see where it's going to get kind of repetitive if you always start with this everywhere. So kind of a hint, I guess, is when you're first starting it, maybe you can start with like whatever key you're working on, which in this case is D. But as you move on, maybe you want to just kind of link them together a little bit, like that. So it doesn't sound as boring. It actually sounds like a longer sentence. It's not. It kind of doing it the way I was doing it. It's almost like I'm putting periods on everything. That's kind of, for me anyway, what the note for the key feels like is a period. So every time you use it, you're kind of punctuating your song. So if you want it to kind of sound like it's choppy, you can do that intentionally by having a lot of these. It just really, your head's kind of doing this to it because it's where everything's coming to a close. But if you want it to kind of flow a little longer, you should avoid that kind of period. Keep your sentences going with like ands and buts and ors and semicolons. And you can keep going like this. Obviously, I'm following the lines, keeping it simple. It's kind of a way to get started. And if you want to build your song with simple parts, what you can do is just kind of go for maybe, even just 2 is fine. For example, take this, go down here, and these are all in Japanese too. I'm sorry. This is copy and paste. And you could just do a little bit of a variation to it. For example, this one kind of goes up and ends down, so maybe you could have it do something like this. Let's do that. End it up, and end this one up as well. even higher. Use a note that we haven't used before to make it really have that kind of punch. So you can see where it's kind of going up, like higher in frequency or whatever, so it sounds brighter. This last note in each of these like little sentences here kind of can dictate the mood. If it goes up, it feels like energy. If it goes down, it feels kind of like, again, to me. I mean, those are still pretty similar, so it still sounds a little bit repetitive, but you can kind of see where right here, you know, when this piano chimes in, it doesn't sound like it's clashing with the guitar for two reasons. One, it's starting here at the same note, which is cool. It's D5, I guess, here, and then this acoustic guitar is D4, so it's the same D. So they both kind of start at the same place and kind of go off from there and then come back together. That's what kind of keeps them from clashing with each other. There's more clever things you can do with it if you know a lot about music, but this is the simple way to do it. And you know, once you start kind of building these things up, you know, you could probably keep going with this like this. Yep. All right, I guess that was okay. I want to kind of keep the same pattern going. In fact, I think I am using the exact same beat, so I guess it doesn't matter. So, you know, if you did this, it's a repetition. It's already kind of repetitive in the first place, and it's just doing the same thing again. It's, you know, for me, I've always been like, I've been more of a, you know, into writing than music in general, but music and writing kind of feel similar in a way. Music, you have to kind of strike this balance of giving the listener what they're expecting, but just throwing a curveball in there once in a while to kind of keep it interesting. Because if you just literally stretch this out for 2 minutes, it's gonna put people to sleep unless it's the best, you know, 10-second, 20-second clip in the world. It's gonna just put people to sleep. They're gonna get bored with it because, you know, they get used to it. So what you can do is you can start coming in here and playing around with the way these things move. You can completely like change this stuff. Obviously, I'm just doing this kind of by the seat of my pants. I don't know what I'm doing, so. Even go down a bit for that, for example. Who knows what this is going to sound like, but let's see. See if it sounds a little less repetitive. See, just that little extra note. Just that little extra note that starts in a place that no note has ever started in before just gives it just that little bit of something to stand out from the previous part and not make it sound boring, while not being just so completely different it sounds like it's jarring. I'll show you an example of what would be jarring here. So let's see. What would be jarring? I have to do something crazy to be jarring, because in general this is going to be okay. In general, if you're sticking to the key, it's not going to be jarring. So yeah, I'm sure it's fine. It might actually work, but let's try it. Just kind of something completely different, and let's see what that sounds like coming out of this. Yeah, all right, in this case it kind of worked out. In this case it kind of worked out because it's the same instrument and everything else, but it can be jarring depending on what you do. I'm sticking with the same key in general, so it's okay. It's almost like it's just that slow down part of the song. This one actually worked out fine, so it's not a great example. But, you know, you just kind of have to tread this line between going crazy all the time and not going crazy all the time. In fact, over a long song, that's where it really starts to kind of come out. If you're just constantly doing new stuff in a song, it just, the way music works is you start off with this key, you're expecting things to come back here, you're expecting things to come back, and, you know, obviously like Mozart, people like that are much better at surprising people than I would ever be. But what they do is Mozart would be a great example. I should find a Mozart piece. But Mozart was great because what he would do is he would, you know, have a piece going and you expect it to come back like this, and you're like, oh, here we go, the song's gonna end, and then poof, it kind of goes off again. And it's like just all this kind of time, like you're about to get home, and nope, you don't. It's kind of like a movie when you think about it. You know, it looks like the good guys are gonna win, but nope. He's gonna get the girl, nope. And it just kind of, but it's not, you know, starting off as like a love romance, and then suddenly they're in space, and then suddenly they're like, you know, fighting the undead in like Jurassic Park or something. It's not jumping all over the place because it's kind of got its theme and it's sticking with it, but it's not letting it end, and that's what keeps it interesting. And that was very highfalutin, but there you go. It's a good place to get started. If you want to add more instruments, usually a good idea is you don't want to overload the listener with too much new stuff. So one thing I could do, for example, if I was going crazy, would be something like this. Guess I have to go low with the banjo. In fact, let's make these notes short because it is a banjo, so it'd be strummed. Doot, doot, doot. There we go. Made them short, kind of overlapped them a little bit so they get that strumminess to them. Yeah. Now, probably if you're listening to that, you're like, suddenly when the banjo comes in, it's like, what? It doesn't really fit into the song, and there's a reason for that. It doesn't really fit because this is just, you're finally getting used to the fact that there's a piano in this song. You're expecting it to go on, and then just suddenly a new instrument comes in and throws you off. It's kind of like, I don't know, an indie movie or something where just weird things happen, just out of the blue for no reason whatsoever. So if you start to overload your listener, it's hard to introduce new instruments, but what you can do is you can get them used to an instrument and then bring in the new instrument. So this will probably be a little better. See, you're kind of tired of the piano by the time you get here anyway, so when a new instrument comes in, it's a little less, you know, what? Because it's all about, like, in this case, it's kind of like these instruments and these blocks are like paragraphs. You're finishing up your topic, you're saying what you have to say, and then it's like, okay, here's the next thing I have to say. Otherwise, you're just kind of like jumping all around the place. So that's one thing I've been using to kind of keep the music going. So you've got a couple of things here. You've got start with your beat, which helps kind of, it gives you a foundation for putting other stuff on top of it. You can change it later. Obviously, you know, keeping this thing the same thing all the way through is going to be kind of boring. So maybe after a couple of iterations, you can start fiddling with it a little bit. But you probably, if you do have your bass, you don't want to be going all over the place with it because that's what the other instrument should be doing. One thing, it's the same principle as down here. You don't want to introduce too much new stuff at once unless you really know how to do it. So in this case, for example, the bass beat starts here, goes into the piano a little bit. The piano makes a change. So this is probably not a good place to do like a change to the bass beat because your attention is going to be on the way the piano is changing. So if you change the bass beat too, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But what would be a better idea is to maybe wait until here, for example. Let's move that back. Let's put 2 more of these in. So let's repeat the initial bit. And this would be, for example, because this is a pure repetition, the ear's used to it, it knows what it's doing. You can come up here and then maybe, let's see, what would be a good one to do? Let's just try dropping it. Just change the end. And then from here on, maybe alternate it. Just this one's every other one. And then the original variation's every other one. You can kind of keep that going, for example. So let's see what that sounds like. So we'll start changing here. That one's almost so subtle it doesn't really get detected. But the important thing is, I could have changed that a little more. The important thing is that I'm not changing more than one thing at a time. So it's kind of like, as you're flowing along, you're flowing in kind of a straight line. You're not making these huge jumps. And that kind of works out. Introducing the banjo all of a sudden, I wouldn't want to go back to the piano too quickly, so I could probably keep going with this. And I probably don't want to use the same key again because that would be boring, or the same D start. And I am picking these randomly, by the way. I'm not thinking about it too much. There's probably maybe some subconscious thing that's making me pick these in a certain pattern, but I'm just going with kind of filling in the lines because you can do that. So let's see what that sounds like, maybe after the transition. So let's go up to here. So you've got the piano thing doing its thing over and over again, then suddenly the piano changes. Slows down the song a little bit, feels a little different. Maybe not such a great ending there, but it sounds okay. And I even was able to stop the bass beat, for example, because if I just keep this bass beat going forever, maybe people get bored with it. Introducing a new instrument seems like a good time to focus on that instrument. So these are just little things you can kind of do to keep it going. And as you can see, it's 120 beats per minute, and I'm already up to 40 seconds, for example, there. Keeping it very simple, very, very simple, just keeping the same key, the same everything going. Just throwing in a few variations, changing up the instruments a little bit, doing stuff like that. Could also, for example, let's actually fix this real quick. Yeah, I'm playing two notes at the same time, that's why it feels weird. This should fix it up a little bit. Maybe that'll be better. Yeah, okay, there we go. Here's something. Chords. If you've played guitar, why are you watching this? Because you know better than me. But chords are when you play multiple things at the same time. Usually it's about 3, but it can be more. In this case, I don't think this is going to sound very good. Let's see what happens. There you go. Didn't sound good at all. Kind of sounds... That's because these notes, the way they are, there are only certain notes in a certain kind of a distance that play well together. And in fact, I don't know what that is, so what I can do is come over here and let the software do the work for me. Go with, I am using a major key, so D major, so I can use a major chord, for example, and go replace that with just a note that plays all at once. Let's see what this sounds like. I'm not sure what this is going to be like. Yeah, it's probably not so great on the banjo. Let's do the piano. let's show chords on the piano. That's probably going to be better. Okay, let's just go with a straightforward D major chord, and then go with a non-chord here. See, in that case, the notes playing together at the same time kind of work together. In this context, it's not very interesting, but if you stick with like the way the software tells you these are the chords, and you can pick from here if you know about chords or whatever, But if you want to just go with the key that's with your song or something, you can just lay down the chords, and that kind of gives you a little bit of an extra oomph. Where chords can come in handy, this is going to be much more advanced than it's probably worth talking about, but a lot of songs use kind of these chords and variations of them to switch like around keys and stuff, because you can use tricks. Because you're playing multiple keys at the same time, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off. I don't think I have the knowledge to do this properly, but let's find out. So like, for example, that one worked too. Moved this one from there to here. And based on like the way other keys share notes, you can kind of transition. You can use these chords to kind of transition into something else without people feeling like, ugh, this story just suddenly changed on me. But, you know, that's something that's worth looking into if you're interested in changing keys in a song. This is just for a short video game music, so I'm not going to be changing keys over the course of a minute. So I don't have to worry about that stuff, thankfully. But, you know, if your song's going to be going on for like 4 minutes or 5 minutes, you probably do want to start changing stuff up. A lot of songs do that. Like, for example, if you go from like the chorus to a verse and stuff like that, you can kind of hear that it's different. Like, there's kind of the downbeat part, and then suddenly there's this upbeat part, and then there's this downbeat part, and it's probably because they're switching to different keys and things like that. But here we go. Let me get rid of this. And all right, I've got my banjo in here. It's a new instrument. Welcome to the show. And what I can do with this now is bring this over here. Yeah, let's bring it over just as is. And just change this just a little bit. Maybe just make that higher. Yeah, so as you can see, because I gave the ear kind of time to get used to this new instrument, I could bring this back, because up until now, the ear's been, around here anyway, the ear's been kind of expecting there to be no acoustic guitar in the background because I turned it off. But by about here, you're kind of used to the banjo, and you can bring other stuff back in. You could even start, for example, going back and forth. Because once in a while you do want to kind of bring your listener back to where you started, because it just kind of puts them at ease that you've got kind of a point that you're trying to make. So you can do something like this, and then do a little bit of a surprise. Let's do this. Let's try this. Let's see how this works out. And you can kind of do a little bit of a surprise, like here I did 2 banjos in a row, 2 pianos in a row, and then I started off with the banjo again, so you're expecting the banjo to keep going, but then it switches to the piano. But since I've already done this once, the ear kind of forgives that stuff. Back to where the song started. Oh, here's the banjo again. Okay, it's gonna keep going. Oh, wait, it didn't. But I recognize the piano thing. It's not like I'm just coming out of here with some crazy solo all of a sudden. And you can kind of do this and keep going. This is already like a minute, for example, and you can keep going. If you want to keep going, you probably don't want to just keep recycling the same parts. You want to keep changing things up. You probably do want to throw a solo in if you want to go past a minute. Certainly, what you can do with a solo is kind of like what this piano is doing. So here's how I can pull that off probably. Let's try it. Let's see what this sounds like. faded away. What's going on? And then suddenly it's just kind of like this piano is off on its own for the first time, so you get to play with it. It's a little slow right now. I probably should actually have more stuff going on there, but there you go. That's kind of how you can just kind of fake your way to a song in a way. I'm by no means a musician, obviously. If you know music, you should not have been watching this video because you're probably extremely irritated with everything I'm saying. Fair enough. I'm definitely not a musician. I don't know what I'm talking about, but most of us aren't musicians. Most of us do have other things we have to make, but we do have to get music into the stuff we're making. So if you are making a game, this is kind of an intro course on how you can get this stuff going. Just one thing you should know about LMMS. Save this. You can export your tracks, obviously, so you can use WAV files or OGG files, and you can bring those into your game. You could put them into Audacity and change them to MP3 files. You can do whatever you want with them. You can also, when you're doing that, you can decide to cut off like the silent bit at the end to make sure that it can loop. And let's see, one thing about looping. What I should say about looping. We started with D. So if you finish with D, it's going to sound weird. Let's see if I can pull this off. Let's just force this into D. Let's just force this last key to be D and see what it sounds like when it loops around. And let's go ahead and get rid of that. Let's see if I can do this here. Get everything in its right place. I can get these things to loop. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to. Okay, I need to cut some of this stuff out. Well, let's just cheat. Let's cheat and throw this in there. Because I want the piano to be there because it's the same instrument, so it'll be really easy to tell what's going wrong if this works out. Yes, not from the beginning, thank you. Sorry. Let's start from the end here. Let me actually fix the loop thing for you first. I need to have it loop there. Okay, there we go. Now it should be good to go. Sorry about that. Maybe it'll work out, actually. That one kind of worked out because I have this note right at the end, so it feels like it's just a really long note. So in that case, it worked out. Let's see if I do this. Maybe that pause in there will help make it sound odd. It's the same instrument, so the note just felt longer in that case. Yeah, okay, there you go. It's hard to detect in this song, I guess, because there's not that much going on, but because there was this D, which I mentioned is like the period, boom, song's done, there's a pause, good. And boom, D again. So what it does is it makes it feel like it's a loop. It makes it feel like you've come to the end of the song and you're back at 0 seconds again. So you probably, if you're making loops, you do want to avoid that. At least I've always avoided it. Maybe in music theory it's better not to avoid it. But if you just move this up a little bit, it should be all right. Let's see what it sounds like. Because I still have that pause to indicate the end of the song. Yeah. It's still the pause, so you still know it's looping, but it still sounds like kind of a continuation, so it's okay. It's looping back. So let's see, is there anything else I should talk about? There's obviously a lot of editing stuff in LMMS that you can do, like moving notes around and stuff like that. I guess that's more technical stuff. It's probably worth watching someone work in LMMS to do that, but this is more to kind of get you started with video game music. And that was just a test. Pulled everything, just dropping notes and kind of pulling it out of my hat, so to speak. So it's not a proper song, but here are some of the songs I have been working on for the game. Want to let you give a listen on those. Let's see if I can get to desktop. just what I've been working on so far, because I do want you to be able to see everything that's going into making this game. Desktop projects, there we go. So, Long Sunset, let's see, Western theme. Let's start with Western theme. This would probably be like, if you've been watching me make the game, it's the town stage, it's the music for that stage. If this loads up properly, hopefully, maybe. Okay, well, what is going on there? Western theme, wow. That's not the right song. Try that again. Projects. Scorching Sands, Phrygian Six-Suiter, Long Sunset, Jaunty Mosey. Western theme. Feels like I'm missing something. Alright, we'll go with Long Sunset then. Something didn't get copied over. Oh wow, a lot of stuff is going weird here. I'm sorry. Wow, okay. I'm sorry about this. A lot of stuff is not showing up properly. Let me try jumping out of LMMS and see if that helps. I'll try Santa Saloon. Okay, I think it was just a problem with LMMS. LMMS, by the way, does crash a lot, so save your work as much as possible. If it does crash a lot, one thing you can do is you can, as long as you've got this thing playing, it doesn't tend to crash as much. So let's try that again. Western theme. Hopefully it loads up properly this time. There we go. There we go. Thought I lost all my work. So this is Western theme. This is in D major, which is what I was just working in, using the exact same instruments. A lot of this extra junk here is from things I tried out and didn't work out. But I've got kind of an acoustic guitar beat in the background and a piano working, and it kind of goes to another acoustic guitar. So here's what it sounds like. Bass beat, very cowboy. Kind of upbeat, kept it short. But you can see what I'm doing with the themes. Changed it a bit so it doesn't sound repetitive. Introduced a new instrument. Brought back in like the bass stuff. And start switching back and forth between them. So that's Western theme, for example. In fact, I'll close this down every time to make sure that this works. A boss fight, for example. This I also did in D major, but made it a little faster, as well as trying to kind of keep the beat up because it's a boss fight, so it should feel a little more threatening. And a lot of that I did with speeding up this bass beat. It wasn't just doop, 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 doop. It was more doop, 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 doop. And as you can see, the banjo also makes it, because it's more shrill, makes it feel a little more like energetic, more panicked. So it kind of fits a boss fight. Volumes are not balanced or anything, so the banjo probably sounds too loud, for example, there, but that's that. Scorching Sands is like with the Scorpions. I think I'm using D major here as well. Looks like it. And here I actually use a bass line. So I'm using those maracas and the voice clap as kind of a bass beat. The reason I'm doing that is because a scorpion has a stinger and it kind of feels like an insect would crawl over the sand. But I've also got kind of a lonely desert sound on the harmonica going. Kind of blending the insect in with the Western theme in this case. That's where I'm at with that one. Santa Saloon, that's for the Christmas stage. I'm not sure how far I've gotten with this one. I think it's just repetitive, so yeah, forgive it if it's not that great. With this one I went with C major, just to keep it simple and bright. It's a little slower. And if you've been kind of following along, you can kind of hear where it's C major instead of D major, maybe. Obviously, you might not recognize the notes or whatever, but it just feels a little more simple, a little more innocent. Like D sounds, the D major sounded a little more like triumphant and fighting. This one just sounds like, going off Christmas shopping. Speed had a lot to do with that as well. So that's where like key can really make a difference in this stuff. Phrygian 6-shooter. This is the graveyard theme. This is the one that's probably the most different right now because I don't use D major, C major. I use a Phrygian. Let's see, did I go with B? Let's see what I did. If it's in here. C sharp, it looks like. Is that right? Is that where I started it? It might be C sharp, I don't know. Because it looks like C sharp or D flat. D flat, maybe. It's the same thing. C sharp is D flat, depending on which direction you're going from. But it's Phrygian, so let's see what this sounds like. Just by changing the key and following along. Adding a little echo, of course, but as an effect, but sounds a lot more ominous. It's definitely not cheery. And depending on how you like music, I suppose it might sound pretty awful to you, but looking at this key, I don't have it marked right now, so it's hard to see, but some of these notes actually don't fit in those lines, and I've put them there on purpose to kind of make it sound odd. It gives it that kind of that comes up once in a while, and that's on purpose because it's kind of a creepy graveyard thing. There should be a little bit of discord in there. Like horror movies often use a lot of like discord and things like that, just music notes in the wrong places to kind of throw you off. So I just kind of squeezed a few of those in there to give it a creepy sound. It kind of sounds like a spider walking around or something maybe. But that's using like Phrygian, so that's the biggest like different song because the graveyard's a very different level. Odd Spaceman, I'm still working on this one. Just got started, as you can see. Yeah, obviously that's just literally just got started on that one. Just wanted to try a few things out, mostly with effects and things, because this is obviously Odd Spaceman. It's going to be for the space stage, so I want something a little more like echoey and eerie and, you know, kind of like an alien invasion. This is probably one where I don't want to go with a normal scale either. Like there are some scales that kind of feel like sci-fi movie scales. Like I think Lydian might feel kind of sci-fi movie. It was either Lydian or Dorian, one of those two. See, I'm obviously not the knowledgeable person. Check out these sites. But if I use one of those, it should work out much better. It should sound much more, hopefully that's okay. I guess I have to replace this one. For front piano. Let's try that again. This is kind of the game over music. The credits are rolling, the cowboy's kind of walking off into the sunset, or the outhouse, as the case may be for this game. Very simple. It's still D major because it's kind of heroic, but it's nice and slow. Not a whole lot of changing going on because there's, you know, credits rolling by, and it should be slower, simpler, more idyllic. Very simple. And I think that's about all I've got there. That should cover quite a bit. Like going over to my task list here, if you've been following the show, you know I keep a task list over at Project Spaghetti Trello. If you search both of those things, you can come over here. These are like the music pieces I kind of have to do. So like a secret level music, which should probably be more somber and mysterious. The title screen music should kind of get players pumped to play the game. The town level, you've kind of heard where I'm going with that. Graveyard, desert, snow, you've heard a boss, you've heard where I'm going with those. Game over, you heard where I'm going with those. Space level just started. So as you can see, I've kind of got, you know, bits and pieces of these things going. Hopefully I'll have them all ready by the time the game is set to go. But I did want to just do this episode really quick because I don't want to just throw music into the game and not show you how I'm making it anyway, because that's the whole point of this, is to show everything that goes into making a game. If you want to learn proper music stuff, there's plenty of ways you can do that. Plenty of websites, the ones that I showed before. Obviously, YouTube is a rich source of learning about music. Depends on whether it's guitar or piano. It's a very different kind of way to learn music. But if you don't have a whole lot of time to learn music and you just kind of want to get started and play around, I hope this gave you kind of a foundation to work with for that. Because to be honest, if you play around, then you can start kind of studying on top of that. If you just start by studying, then you don't really have anything to work with. It's like when you want to learn a guitar or something, you probably grab it and start strumming it and making noise, and it's like, it sounds awful. But maybe once in a while you get something that sounds all right, and then when you start learning, it's like, oh, that was that, and it kind of feeds back. And like any other kind of learning, you have to be doing it at the same time as learning it, otherwise it doesn't stick. So that's where I am with music. I wanted to give you an update and kind of make a music special, just so you're not kind of caught out of the blue when music starts going into the game, and so you can kind of see my process. If you have music questions, I'm probably not going to be able to answer them. If you had questions about something I said and wondered why I did something, then maybe I can answer that. And hopefully you're not music people and start bashing me, because there's plenty of places to bash, I'm sure. But hope this was helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next regular episode. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.